Hello again. I am Tanya Schulte with the Profit Constructors, and we're in the middle of a 4-part series about streamlining your job costing with Knowify. In part 3 of this series, we're going to talk about another piece of job costing that is very important, and that is your materials and your subcontractors. In part 1, we discussed how to set up the job. And in part 2, we talked about labor, which is arguably the most expensive portion of most of our jobs, as you guys know. So today, let's look at materials and subcontractors and how to get those job costs in. And again, you'll see how seamless and easy this can be. So once you're in the plan and track section of your selected job, you'll see the various phases that you have set up. And you want to go ahead and effectively track costs associated with materials and subcontractors here. But a really important part about this, an essential portion of this, is tracking it back against the right phase of the job. So let's take a look at this particular plan and track. You'll see that in this case, we have multiple phases. Just so you know, this is actually set up as an example of what a plumber might use. So in this case, they would have underground, rough-in, and trim. If we scroll down a little bit, there's actually some change orders that came after the original contract was issued. But each one of those, so each underground, rough-in, and trim are each considered a phase, and every change order is considered its own separate phase once the original contract has gone out. Now, we're going to talk first about assigning materials to phase. So within each phase, you can specify when you go to create the job, the materials that are required to complete that phase. And that ensures that when you record the material purchases, they're directly linked to the accurate phase of the job that you wanted them to be linked to. And this is just going to help you keep track of things and make sure everything's in order and you have clarity on what is happening across each of those phases. So when we're ready to procure the materials, we're just going to be right here on the plan and track section. And you can see that some of these show a status of not ordered. And that's actually a clickable link. So you can click on not ordered and it's going to bring up this screen where we can just order straight from that list we made when we went to create this phase of the job. Now I can select one at a time, or if I'd like to just select everything, I can go ahead and click up here and select all at once. You'll also notice that it put the quantity that we originally established we would need to order when we established this job. And we can use those quantities and we can see the subtotals of costs that we have in our budget for those parts. Or let's say we just want to place an order for half of this up front. So we can make those changes, and you'll notice as I'm making those changes, it's updating my subtotal as well. So we're just going to go ahead and update our order to be half of what we need. We might order half up front. We'll order half when we get closer to needing that. And then all I have to do to create a purchase order now is click Start PO Process. It's going to take me into Knowify's purchase order screen. Here in the purchase order screen, I need to just select the supply house that I'll be ordering these from. And as you can see, it's added all of my parts with the quantities that I just suggested and the unit costs that are in my budget, and it's assigning them to the correct phase of the job, which is exactly what we want it to do. Now we could and may eventually do a whole other series on purchasing and Knowify, but suffice it to say, you can see how pretty quickly and easily we can take what might have been on a takeoff that has been uploaded into this job and create a purchase order out of it that can go out to our vendor. Once I verify and submit that, I have all kinds of ways that I can get that to the vendor, including email and other aspects of how I can do that. And again, that might be a whole other series to get into about doing purchasing. But now then, we have created a purchase order which will now show committed costs against this project. Once the materials are received, and the vendor bills entered, Knowify is going to automatically update the actual job costs for us, and we'll be able to see those expenses in real time. So as you can see, the great part about what we have done here is we now can see committed costs, what we have out on purchase order. We can see our original budget, so that will give us information about what we still have left to order. And once we receive those bills, we'll have clarity on our actual costs. So budgets, committed costs, and actuals are all contained in one very easy to use system. Okay, so that's how we get materials here. And as you can see, now it's showing that we've ordered half of those and they're on a purchase order. What about subcontractors? Well, subcontractors in Knowify are treated very much like purchase orders, and you can send them to your subs, but they do work a little bit differently. So let's go down to our rough-in phase, and let's go ahead and assign a subcontractor to work on this phase. So I'm going to just go ahead and click Add Subcontractor. I'm going to pick the subcontractor that I am entering into this agreement with. So now this is going to actually set up a subcontract within Knowify for me. And again, treated very much like a purchase order, but working just a little bit differently so that I can very much streamline and make sure that I'm doing exactly what I want to have done with this particular subcontractor. So the description that's pulling in for me here is the description of the phase on which I'm working, and I can leave that. I might want to change this subcontract description. I might want to change it to perform rough-in, whatever the case is that I need to tell them about what the work is that they need to do, and the contract value that's going to be assigned here. Now this contract value is likely my budgeted value that's pulling in, but let's say that I was able to negotiate a little bit of a lower price with this particular sub between budgeting and actually getting those bids in and finding out what the sub is going to charge me. So I can always change that as well. I'm going to say this is exactly the contract value that I will have with this sub. And if I have an actual signed subcontract, I can put that right in here. So I can drag and drop that file in here. And I have the ability, because I know at this point that we're changing that dollar value that I originally signed in the budget, to just go ahead and adjust the budget in this phase now that I know exactly what this subcontract amount is going to be, which would be recommended, right? Because now we'll know that we're not having to pay what we'd originally thought that we were going to have to pay. It could go either way, right? Perhaps it might go up or down, but we kind of had set that original budget. Now we can adjust to what our actual budget numbers are going to be in line with. Okay, and as you can see, just much like the materials area, this created a purchase order. So now then we can take a look back at that PO. I'm just going to click on View PO, and it's very, very similar to the PO that we saw before, but it is letting us know that it's a subcontractor PO. And once again, we could email this to them. Again, we could do a whole other video series on purchasing and how all of that works. But as you can see, this is going to, now we have committed costs out there for this job. It's adjusted our budget for us. And we have very accurate real-time data, allowing us to be very, very clear about what is happening, what the costs should be on the job, and what that subcontract looks like. As you know, we've been talking all the way through about how the fact that Knowify can handle not just these long-term, larger projects, but we're able to also handle our service jobs here in Service Pro, and which is built right into Knowify. And so the idea over here in service is going to be exactly the same. The scale might be just a little bit smaller, but the process is pretty much similar. You're going to record purchases and any other expenses directly within the service ticket. And that way you're going to ensure that every cost is captured and attributed correctly back to that ticket. So you can kind of keep an eye on what's happening on the service side, just like you would on the contract side. So the takeaway here, I think, is that if you're diligently assigning your material and subcontractor costs to specific phases and utilizing these built-in purchasing tools, which as you can see, we did in just under 10 minutes here, we got a purchase order for materials and subs sent out. That would happen in less than 2 minutes if I wasn't standing here talking about it. This whole approach allows you to monitor your budgets closely and make informed decisions promptly, which is a big part of what we want to help you do here at the Profit Constructors. If you have any questions about this, of course, you can always reach out and talk to us. And next time in our final video, part 4, we're going to explore how to leverage Knowify's reporting features to kind of pull all of this together and see our true profitability.